Wow. Okay. This is a good one here, guys.
Yes.
Welcome back to SOS.
Welcome back to
Welcome
SOS.
back. And hopefully we have some new listeners who have popped over here to see how you feel about us after you heard our interview with That's So Retrograde, Stephanie and Elizabeth, on their show. So if you jumped over to ours to see if you want to stick around, hopefully this one gets you, because we have our resident astrologer here. She is consistently our most popular guest. This will be her 4th time on, I believe.
Yeah. I can't believe it's already
Jordan
been 4.
Shomer.
It's crazy. I can't believe it's been 4 already.
I know. She was our very first guest when we started having guests on our podcast.
Yeah.
And then now she's, our resident astrologer. Continues to drop the most real shit. We had her on, what was it, May 28th or something, 2020. And she talked about, she's like, some type of revolution is coming. It has to do with justice. The next day, George Floyd was murdered. So, and that's not even the only thing. She said so many, she's really in tune and really connected. And so I can't wait.
Watch to the very end, because she drops some knowledge about what the end of the year is going to look like. And
some pretty specific prediction without predicting, but kind of. You know, she's been so spot on that I do not discount what she's saying.
So, enjoy.
So, yes, enjoy.
Yay, we're so happy you're here again, Jordan. Jordan,
welcome
our favorite guest.
back. Your astrologer friend
me.
and our most frequent guest and our most popular guest is back. So for those of you who are new, who might be tuning in because maybe you heard us on That's So Retrograde, welcome. And Jordan is our resident astrologer, always dropping the knowledge bombs, dropping the wisdom bombs, letting us know what to expect, how to stay in flow with the universe. And not in a predicting the future kind of way, more in like a get in tune with what is happening in the universe kind of way. So we're so excited to have you back, Jordan. And I do know that you started today by pulling a tarot card, right? Like for an overall message, correct?
I did. So I felt called to pull a card, maybe a collective message, maybe, you know, one of us needs this or one of you out there needs this. So take what you like, leave what you don't. But I pulled a card from the archetype deck, the archetype guidebook by Kim Kranz, The Wild Unknown. It's a beautiful deck of oracle cards, and each one associates with a different archetype. And for us today, I pulled the Hunter.
Ooh, that's beautiful.
So the hunter, the seeker, the pursuer, the predator. The hunter hunts. They are on a precise mission with an aim. To return home empty-handed would be to fail, which is not an option in the hunter's eyes. This archetype will journey far and wide, seeking the prize that calls to its heart or stomach. Tales of bravery, feats of strength are often result, creating a life full of adventure. The hunter is skillful, quick, decisive, and results-oriented. Like the great hunting goddess Artemis, who carries her quiver upon her back, the hunter typically has a weapon of choice. When this card appears, it is critical that you ask yourself 3 questions. What am I hunting? Why am I hunting it? And is the weapon I hold so tightly in my grip truly needed for the task at hand?
Wow. I like that.
I do too. I feel like
think about that.
There is so much aimlessness whirling around us. I think last time we chatted, we discussed a little bit about the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction, the great conjunction in Aquarius, really ushering us into the future, into the age of air, the energy of Aquarius. And there is this vast unknown that is sort of having us clamoring for some semblance of stability or some semblance of control. And I think that coming back to maybe a one point of focus and realigning ourselves with an aim or a direction, not as the end all be all, but just as a point of focus, just something to keep our eyes locked on as the storm whirls around us, because we are very much in a storm right now, and finding that direction might be, just for the time being, an opportunity for us to ground into that unknown and find a little bit of stability within the surrender that is required of us in order to move through this period.
Yeah. And last time we talked, which was around the new year, right? Because we were discussing a little before the new year.
Yeah, I think it was like November or something.
Yeah, that's right. And I remember, with tell me if I'm wrong. So with eclipse seasons, what shows up at the beginning of it will show itself again in the next 6 months. Is that correct? Because
yes,
either something that starts at the beginning of it will wrap up, or the same themes will be revisited. So where are we in eclipse season right now? Are we about to wrap one up? I really am uninformed about this. Or are we in the middle of one?
No, right now we are about to enter Taurus season. The sun right now is at 29 degrees of Aries, which means it is about to move into the sign of Taurus. And so we have one more season, one more sun season, so Taurus season, before we begin eclipse season, which is Gemini. And that is because the eclipses, which sit opposite each other in the sky, are in Gemini and Sagittarius. So Gemini is going to be the first eclipse season of the year, and then Sagittarius season will be the second eclipse season of the year.
I see. Okay, because I was wondering that, because I'm wondering what is going to be happening in the sky this summer, if we're looking specifically at summer 2021, which we're very quickly approaching. What are some of the overarching themes that you see, or anything you anticipate over the next coming months?
Yeah, I think that this summer will be really interesting. I think that it will provide a different quality of energy than we've been working with thus far in 2021. The first few months of 2021, I'm sure you both felt it. You're pretty intuitive. The energy of the first 3 months of the year or so was very crunchy. There wasn't a whole lot of movement. There was a lot of friction and tension, and things moved very slowly. And that's because this year we're working with a lot of fixed energy. We have Saturn and Jupiter in the sign of Aquarius, and then we have Uranus in the sign of Taurus. And throughout the year, we are moving through this sort of fixed battleground between Saturn and Aquarius that continue to show up in this epic kind of face-off. And the way that these face-offs feel when moving through fixed signs, so the fixed signs are Taurus, Scorpio, Taurus, Cancer, Scorpio, and Aquarius. Because the fixed signs they're fixed. They are immovable. It's sort of like rubbing two immovable forces together. It creates this friction. It's like this slow going grind, this churning
like a glacier.
sort of energy. Yes. Yeah. And so that's what really began the year. And then we got a little bit of movement in Pisces season. We had a buildup of Pisces energy when the sun was in Pisces and Mercury and Venus was all in Pisces. And that brought a little bit of movement or mutability. And this summer, I feel like we're really going to find a lot more uplifted energy. And the reason for that is kind of twofold. We have eclipse season, which will sort of bring back to life the circumstances that came up like around end of November into mid-December or so. And so the topics there will come back to life. But also, eclipse season is like really unpredictable. And the nature of eclipse season is really to kind of like surrender to what comes and have grace for what goes. And so that lends itself to a little bit of like sort of this like free fall energy. And while we are moving into eclipse season, we also have Jupiter, the planet of abundance and luck and justice, moving into his home sign of Pisces. And like Jupiter has been going through it for the last few years. Like Jupiter was in Capricorn, which is just like an impressive environment for Jupiter. Jupiter is the bringer of gifts and wants to just like Santa wants to give everyone a gift. But depending on Santa's capacity and also, you know, how quote unquote good you've been, sometimes you get a Barbie dream house and sometimes you get a lump of coal. And while Jupiter was in Capricorn, he was under the thumb of Saturn, which is like Jupiter or Saturn is like the landlord of Capricorn. Whatever happens in Capricorn, Saturn is in charge of. So Jupiter was being tasked for that year to really dole out tests and lessons and challenge rather than the abundance and opportunity that he prefers. And now Jupiter is in Aquarius, which is, it's an environment that Jupiter can operate in a little bit, I don't want to say better, but like with a little bit more levity. Jupiter is a very optimistic and buoyant planet, and being in an air sign is a lot more freeing than it is to be in grounded Capricorn and oppressive Capricorn. But Aquarius is also a sign ruled by Saturn. And it is currently sharing space with Saturn. So Jupiter has been under the thumb and under the rulership of Saturn for a year and a half or so.
Since 2020 basically started.
Yeah. So our capacity for abundance has been limited. But Jupiter saunters into Pisces on, I have this date written down, on May 13th and dips his toe in. He only gets 2 degrees into Pisces before beginning a retrograde and then moving back into Aquarius on July 28th. But I feel like this is a time when Jupiter, after being pinched and squeezed and like sort of like lorded over for the last year plus, is really going to rejoice. Like I have a feeling that for better or for worse, we'll have to see how it plays out in the fall. But I have a feeling that there will be this sort of collective belief that things are back to normal, quote unquote. Like it is a time where, because Pisces is the planet of like compassion and the highest vibration of love. And
that's my dad.
I love a Pisces.
Yes, you do.
Yes, you do.
Yes, I do. But I feel like it's a time where we will be inclined to maybe beyond our best judgment, like very literally reach out to those we love. I think it will be a time of more physical touch, a time that feels rejoiceful. And I think it might err on the side of delusional as well, because Neptune is hanging out in Pisces too. And Neptune is the planet of illusion and delusion. And even though they won't come too close together, Jupiter will only get 2 degrees into Pisces and Neptune is at like 21, 22 degrees right now. So they're pretty far apart, but Neptune is still infusing the energy of Pisces with this very idealistic, delusional idea, where I feel like the consequences of those actions we will see kind of materialize in the fall, maybe when Jupiter moves direct again, and then comes back into cohabitation with Saturn, which is like consequences, boundaries, restrictions, limitations, and all of that. But I do feel like the vibe of that chunk of time between May 13th and July 28th might feel like a party.
Yes.
That sounds so amazing.
I mean, it does, considering like where we've been. I also feel like, because like I said, Jupiter is the planet of justice. I feel like so much of the justice that we have been seeking over the last year, we might see come to life. And because it's in Pisces, there is this sort of like collective consciousness that comes with Pisces. Pisces is the sign that understands how truly interconnected we are. And I feel as though the fruits of our frustration and the fruits of our labor towards seeking out justice will come to fruition.
I'm glad you said that too, because, I remember I think it was our first episode with you, you had brought up this like, I see, this is May last year.
It was our second one with Jordan. Yeah.
That's crazy. It was like, I see, a lot of protesting happened. There's going to be a lot of unrest. And the day after was when
revolution.
A revolution. And the day after was when George Floyd was murdered. So it's wild that we can come to a place now where we can have this collective consciousness over what the justice that we're seeking. Doesn't mean it's not any less frustrating, but I was wondering if there's any things that you're seeing that are kind of mirroring what you're saying, like as far as, in the fall, like what could that mean in the fall where things like we'll see what it comes out like? I
mean, it could mean another like spike in COVID cases. It could mean sort of really having to retreat back into our homes and move back into that place of isolation as a consequence for not considering the quote unquote reality of the situation. Because Pisces is not a realistic sign. Pisces is a very idealistic sign and is very much about the potential of a situation. And I think that the fact that we are being mass vaccinations and there's more mobility. I also feel like with eclipse season coming up and it being Gemini season, it's a time where we will be able to move about a little bit more freely. Yeah. So Gemini is all about sort of like close distance travel, car travel, and that sort of thing. And then Sagittarius is long distance travel across the seas, global travel, that sort of thing. So I feel like that's kind of pretty locked up until 2022. Yeah. But being out in the streets, moving about your city in a way that you haven't been able to before. But because of our current circumstances, there are potential consequences for that.
Right.
I also I'm feeling into this overwhelming sort of like need to know. Like we are in the realm of COVID, we want to like know what we're up against, quote unquote. In the realm of social justice, we expect people who have whether it is knowingly or not held on to racist and oppressive beliefs, we want them to know better. There is all of this push towards knowing, where the astrology of right now is really lending itself to not knowing. We are in this period of learning. And, there is this gap between gaining new information, which we are being oversaturated with right now.
Yeah.
Like there is this overstimulation and oversaturation with information, new information. And there is this sort of like synthesis period of being able to translate that information into knowledge. And we're not there yet.
Yeah.
And I think that more of that will come. We will sort of materialize a little bit more knowledge and a little bit more know-how in 2022, which will have very different energy than this year. But we are kind of in that liminal space between learning and knowing. And there's no amount of pressure. There's no amount of shame or guilt or expectation that we can set that will move that along any quicker. So there is this need to kind of sit in, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that for this year, especially because moving into the age of air is the future. We're navigating new territory. And how do you chart uncharted territory, but one step at a time,
Yeah.
And so I feel like leaning into the idea of not knowing, I don't know, is the greatest power move that you can pull these days, because it is the truest, most authentic expression of where we are and where we're meant to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so interesting because we talked about this in an episode recently about like, where we're at and how like just that question of just like, I don't know. And being okay with like your journey is so brave. Like you don't have to have all the answers right now. And that's just like, for me personally, has been such a fucking journey, because 2021 is literally, and I feel it. I feel this shift in where it's just, you have to kind of relinquish control and kind of reset a little bit. And this is just a shout out to how brilliant Jordan is. We did a birth chart reading earlier this year, and everything that she said, I kid you not, is like true. Like I started therapy, Jordan, like it. Yes! so I have to like echo everything you're saying because it makes so much sense. And yeah.
And like I also wonder if that's what, you're saying, May through Gemini season, kind of like this party vibe, or into the fall where people are either under the false impression, I mean, because normal doesn't exist anymore, but you did air quotes for back to normal, and like kind of that sense, because we're all just so anxious to like, and the weather's getting warmer, and it just feels, we didn't feel like we missed a whole summer, right? Like I didn't go to the beach once or sit by the pool once last summer. Like everything, it's like we skipped one. And so everyone's even more ready for a real summer this year, and vaccinations are going around. And it's like, do you think there's a little bit of a danger for pitfalls, like in getting too much caught up in the delusion? Like, do you have any advice for like, there might be more levity and things might be easing up, but maybe watch out for this a little bit so that if something shifts in the fall, we don't get like smacked upside the head again. You know what I mean?
It's interesting because as you're talking, I'm like seeing all of these like memes in my head that have been coming out like since vaccinations have started, where it's like, just because you're vaccinated doesn't mean that the tweets can like adhere to white supremacy, or like just because you're vaccinated doesn't mean that like you XYZ or
you
whatever.
You can call your ex again. Yeah.
And I think using discernment and sort of like challenging yourself in the face of opportunities, not to say don't live your life in a way that feels rejuvenating and refreshing, but like, I feel like this is, in a way, sort of like a test of maturity and a test of our ability to discern what is good for us while also being supportive of the greater good.
Yeah.
It does feel like a bit of a test, of a test of our commitment to the well-being of the collective, as well as sort of like honoring our own needs. So I do feel like there is the potential to go a little bit overboard, especially because Jupiter is like excess and is the energy of overboard. Like Jupiter is more. And the fact that it's Jupiter,
like the roaring 20s.
Yeah. Yes. And like, listen, I'm looking forward to the roaring 20s as much as anyone else. And Jupiter will be in Pisces all of next year. Like next year is it has like big rejoiceful energy, but to get too ahead of ourselves before we're ready, before we have the infrastructure to support that party vibe, not diving in head first without the consideration of the people around you or the impact.
Yeah. So it's like keeping a practice and keeping your head on straight when you literally, it's like you've been starved for a year and someone puts food outside your door and they're like, not yet.
Well, it's like, okay, so it's like, I love reality TV. It's like on Survivor. And during Survivor, sometimes, these people are like on an island, they're starving and then made to do physical activity and also kind of be nice to each other. It's like an impossible task. And every so often they'll have a challenge where if they win, they get a giant feast.
Yeah.
And that is very enticing because they haven't eaten... exactly. They haven't eaten real food. And so they win and then they gorge themselves on food and it makes them so sick.
Ugh.
That is sort of like that's the potential that I'm feeling into. So it's like sort of like utilizing some grounded maturity while in the face of like a giant cornucopia of food in front of you as if you've never eaten before. And knowing that if you do too much, it'll lead to painful consequences.
I feel like everything in our society, like especially within the last 4 years, but in last year and this year, has been so to the extremes. It's like one extreme to the other. So it's like, I feel like as a collective, we've been those people in Survivor that are like, give us some fucking food. Like, please, we need a light at the end of the tunnel. So it's scary to think, not scary, but I guess just interesting to remember how that can lead to maybe, and correct me if I'm wrong, like disappointment, just because it's
disappointment or just like straight up, like reverting back to the circumstances of, let's say, 6 months ago.
Yeah.
And so just being really cognizant that of cause and effect, that your actions and your impulses reverberate in a way that is larger than you, that your impact is larger than just like a little individual bubble. Because also we're moving through, and we have been since spring of 2018, this like collective upheaval of our value system. And so we're in this space of like overturn and renovating our priorities and our values as a collective. And it's really, it's a really susceptible time because our values as a collective they're not rooted.
Right.
And then on the other side of that, we're moving through this like collective wound of individualism. And we're seeing that play out in such a big way because the asteroid Chiron, the wounded healer, has been moving through the sign of Aries, the sign of the individual. And so we are also navigating this energy of like, well, if it's not in front of me, if it's not affecting me, it's not my problem.
Yeah.
And so that creates this dynamic of of like
separateness,
but then also not having the clarity of the overarching values, what's most important to us, because we're in this like period of change and period of upheaval. And one of the major themes this year is this, and I think we talked about it last time we chatted, is this square, this battle between Saturn and Uranus. And it really is this battleground of 2021 of like the old versus the new, and the need to change and innovate, sort of like facing off against the upholding what has already been established.
Yeah. That's like, do you have any kind of like grounding techniques that, because it's going to be easy for all of us to get, and like you're saying, it's not necessarily bad to get swept up in like some more lighter positive energy that we might be feeling, but also, do you have any grounding techniques that people can incorporate into their daily routine kind of throughout the summer and into the fall? And not in a like a negative reality check kind of way, like don't get too excited, but just like ways to keep ourselves grounded and keep ourselves clear so that we can like not gorge ourselves on the feast.
Yeah. I think that navigating the energy of this year is sort of a delicate balance between presence and forward consideration, because the mantra that I've picked up recently for myself, but I feel like there is a collective sense of this, is I don't know where I'm going, but I know I'm on my way. And so I think that in a lot of ways we're being asked to really put one foot in front of the other, and not get too caught up with what happens after that next step, but also keeping into consideration that the future is in our hands, and the future is, from this point, what we make it. We are in this new realm, this space that no one alive has moved through before. And the way that we dream and vision, and then eventually our visions become materialized, and like we are the builders right now. And I think that keeping the collective and the impact of the individual in mind, and knowing that we are all a part of something larger than ourselves. So to not stray too far into individualism where you are kind of bulldozing your way over others to get your individual needs met. I think taking care of yourself while also considering how to take care of the rest of us is part of the sort of balancing act of this year. But I would also say, especially for those of us who consider themselves to be control freaks, or, you know, really really operate in this like need to know, or this need to be in the driver's seat, this need to be in a place of power. I think that examining the illusion of control is really important too, because we live in a society that expects everything to be known and predictable and tangible and logical and make sense. And that's just like not how things work all the time. Like, it's really interesting to me, because to me, the way I feel into it, the antithesis or the opposite, or like the polar energy of sense, is nonsense. And that is such a word that's wrapped up in so much negative connotation. Like it is such like a throwaway term where we're like, you're nonsense, that's nonsense, that, you know, and we devalue the instinctual, intuitive feeling into our surroundings, even when we don't have the facts and the figures and the evidence to back it up. And so go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that, like one of the greatest gifts that humanity has as a species is adaptability. And so it's like, it's one of our natural instincts to adapt to unpredictable circumstances. That's why we're still alive after however many years on this planet. And so to think that we've structured a society around like quelching that instinct is really ironic.
Yeah. And I think that we sort of cage control into sense and into knowing, because that feels like control. If we know what we're working with, if we know how to face it, then we are in the driver's seat. But I think that choosing to be in a place of curiosity and surrender is just as valuable and powerful as knowing. And right now, we don't have the luxury of knowing everything because we're moving through so much uncertainty. And when it comes down to control, the only thing we have to control is our reactions, how we react or respond to the present circumstance. Because projecting our control into the future breeds anxiety. Projecting control into the past breeds depression. And so it's like what we can do to ground ourselves in the whirlwind of 2020/2021 is being radically present, like keeping eyes open and leaning into Gemini North Node, the energy we're meant to be consuming, curiosity, wide-eyed wonder. It's that same, like, I don't know where I'm going, but I know I'm on my way, and I'm just as curious and excited to find out as you are.
I love that, and that's how kids are. Like, they don't worry when they're, little kids. They don't know what the hell is coming, and they don't really care. They're just like, I'm going. And I also, what you said also reminds me of one of my favorite workouts. There's this trainer, I like to do her workouts, and she always says, in the middle of it, like, and you're right where you're just like dying and you're like, I hate all of this. She's always like, guess what, guys? You don't have to like this. What a relief is that? You don't have to like what you're doing. Like, and she's like, how freeing is that? Like, who cares? Don't like it. Just, all you have to do is do it, but you don't have to like it. And when she puts it that way, she always talks about what a relief that is, because it's like, we're always thinking like, I have to make this has to be comfortable. This has to feel okay. This has to, and the not knowing is like, wow, I don't have to know. Wow, that's a huge relief. I actually don't have to know this right now. And once you let go of that in your mind, then you're just like, it takes so much weight off your shoulders.
Yeah. And I'm going to do you one better. And I'm going to go ahead and say, you're not meant to know. You're actually not meant to know until you know.
Exactly.
And so
I know.
Trying to conjure this sense of control or this sense of knowing out of thin air when it's not there for you to hold on to is a waste of your time and energy. And finding comfort in the discomfort of uncertainty and finding comfort in the comfort of of the discomfort of not knowing is, I feel like, one of the biggest tasks of this year. It is in a lot of ways against our nature, but we've probably done more difficult things.
Right.
I'm like, I feel attacked right now. Because it's literally something that I thought about the other day of just like, I'll make this fast and I don't want to make this about me either, but the way I'm interpreting this for me and how I can learn from this is like, I had booked a commercial this week that I was shooting, and on the first day of shooting, I was nervous because it's one of the first things that I've booked in a while, and it's like I'm around people for the first time in a long time, and I had like a panic attack that morning because I just wanted to know if it was going to be comfortable, if I was going to be okay. I needed to know, and I didn't know, and I was like, why am I free? Like I've never done this before. It's a new situation for sure. And by the end of the day, I was just judging the shit out of myself because I was like, it was okay. You know what I mean? Like everything's okay. I didn't have to like every single minute of it. And I learned to be okay in any form of uncomfortability that I had come across. And it was just a lesson in surrendering. And it's still something that I personally have been working on, because I mean, I can imagine, like, control is such an important thing to quell anxiety. And it's like, what are your first steps to do that? Knowing it's okay not to know that. Knowing it's okay, that you're going to be okay. And you're not the only one. That, like, we as a society are doing that together.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's relieving. It's relieving to know you're not alone in that, too. That's kind of like a collective thing.
Yeah, it's all of us. We're all in it together. And I think that questioning and transforming our relationship to control is really important right now. We have Pluto, the planet of destruction, the planet of death leading to rebirth, and the planet of transformation in the final degrees of Pluto, or in the final degrees of Capricorn. And Pluto moves very slowly, can spend like between 15 and 20 years in a sign. And we have been moving through Pluto in Capricorn since 2018. 2008.
Okay.
And so we have been undergoing this sort of like subtle transformation in the Capricorn realm, in the realm of industry and corporation and government and hierarchy, structure, status quo, capitalism, so on and so forth. And Pluto only has another year and a half, 2 years-ish, in the sign of Capricorn. And so Capricorn is also like a planet of, a sign of control, as is Pluto. Pluto is about power struggles and control in that way. And so we are really being asked to sort of like, it's crunch time as far as Pluto is concerned. And we're really being upheld to our contract to transform in the vein of Capricorn. And so I think, if anything, really digging our heels in when we feel that like nagging desire for control, to step back and question, even if I felt in control, would I actually be in control?
Right.
What could I possibly do to gain control? Because chances are it is nothing.
Yeah. Right. It's the illusion.
And it's absolutely an illusion. And the thing about the way Pluto enacts destruction is very much like a phoenix rising from the ashes. But in order to rise, you must burn. And so we're in this burning space where there is so much destruction to the systems and structures at large, to the expectations of the status quo. And also we're getting sort of like the last vestiges of all of these old structures trying to clamor for that control. Yeah. But I think that if we take it upon ourselves to question our desires for control, where is that coming from? And I imagine that if we burrow down deep enough, it's, modeling from the conditions of the world we live in. That's like, if you are seated in a place of quote unquote power and quote unquote control, then you have the status, the recognition, that you have this clear pathway to get to where you are now, to where you want to be. And that's also, true in a lot of ways, because we live in a very racist world, very racist, very classist, very ableist. And we live in a world made in the image of the few. But as Pluto moves into Aquarius, and Pluto hasn't been in Aquarius for like 300 years.
Oh, wow.
Then there is this power, which is Pluto, being directed towards humanity. Like the energy of Aquarius is very decentralized, where Capricorn is like the centralized force, is like a pillar, and everyone sort of like falls into the hierarchy of that pillar, where Aquarius is more of like a flat plane. And so we are being asked to like look at those structures of control and power and hierarchy and organization and corporation in order to know when power is sort of like brought down to our level, how we can move with sort of a new understanding of what control and power looks like.
Wow. Is there like a certain like earth signs or air signs or water signs that in particular might have a hard time with this new phase?
Well, you know, I would say all of the signs, you know, live inside of us. So we have
everything.
We have everything. We are everything. Everything is everything. But you know, I think that earth energy, I would say particularly Taurus and Capricorn, might have a harder time letting go. Capricorn, because the world is built in the image of Capricorn, in this very sort of like hierarchical, goal-oriented, like reputation focused. I did quotes, reputation.
Authoritarian.
Yes, authoritarian energy. And I say Taurus because Taurus is an earth sign, a fixed earth sign, doesn't change well. Taurus doesn't like to change. But I will say that there might be the sort of like mitigating factor of having Uranus, the planet of change and upheaval, in Taurus. So Taurans have already been moving through this like this sort of
upheaval?
kinetic sort of upheaval. Like the energy of Taurus has been shot with electricity since spring of 2018. And so there might be a little bit more malleability there. But I would say, like I said, we all have the signs in our chart. They all live inside of us. And I would say if you are coming up against resistance to change, know that we are changing. We are in the future. And it's either you change with us or you get left behind.
Yeah.
And I don't want to leave you behind. Well, actually, some of you I do want to leave behind. Not you. Not you.
I could name a few.
But actually,
there are some people where I'm like, you know what?
They can
Don't
stay.
worry about it.
Get the fuck out of here.
You know what? Just stay there. It's fine. Jordan, thank you so much. Literally every one of our conversations is so tightly packed with just wisdom and things to think about that I go back and listen to these episodes and seriously, people who are not guests, listeners too, go back and listen to Jordan's other episodes with us. I think there are 3 other ones because it's like equally, if not more enlightening to listen retrospectively and go back and be like, oh my God. Cause then you see it all in the, you know, hindsight is 2020, but you were already speaking a lot of the energetic things that actually happened. And yeah, I'm really grateful to you and all the time you've given to us and our show and our listeners. So thank you so much.
Of course. I would like to end on one note because I find that this podcast brings out the prophet in me. Like, I feel like so many of the things we've discussed, we've like seen come to life.
Yeah.
And we talked about the revolution and the upheaval that, you know, in that episode that we recorded just before the death of George Floyd, which brought all of this civil unrest and call for revolutionizing the way that we value each other. And there are a lot of sort of like perfect storm reasons for astrologically for all of this upheaval to be taking place. And one of the things that I think had one of the largest influences is Venus retrograde. So the death of George Floyd, the protests being out in the streets coincided with Venus's retrograde in Gemini. Gemini is the sign of the voice and learning, and just the fact that everyone was like on social media sharing resources and books, and they're like, unlearn, relearn, all of this stuff. And we were literally out on the streets yelling, protesting. And we have another Venus retrograde coming up in December. And this Venus retrograde is happening in the sign of Capricorn, the sign of institution, corporation, and government. And so I just want to plant those seeds of the potential for some very revolutionizing, what's that word?
Revolutionary?
Yes.
Yeah.
Revolutionary movement to happen in the realm of, I'm going to go ahead and say government, between December 19th and January 29th of 2022.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So the last two Venus retrogrades have been particularly revolutionary because Uranus, the planet of change and upheaval, has been in a sign that is ruled by Venus. So whatever Venus does in the next 6 years has a revolutionary component to it. And I have a feeling that this Venus retrograde at the end of the year is going to be major.
Ooh. I know that could mean a lot of, just like the pandemic was overall, it's a negative thing, but it brought about really important positive change. I feel really hopeful for what that means. Not that it's going to be a beautiful, easy thing. Obviously, that's not the nature of something revolutionary, but necessary.
Yes, I feel that way too. I think that actually, I know in my heart of hearts, without this sort of tangible evidence that our world wants, but I know that everything that has unfolded on a collective level is truly here to move us into the future, is meant to destabilize us just enough to not go back. Yeah. And so if anything, when in doubt, eyes to the future, what is possible, and get together and dream with each other, vision with each other, because the potential for things to come to life in a way that we never imagined possible is very real. You know, if you had told someone 100 years ago that you would be able to fly in a tin can across the world, or there would be a box where you could see someone you love who lived across the country, or, there are all of these innovations that we take for granted because we're living within them. But just know that what we deem impossible is only limited by our capacity to dream.
Yes.
And so I think dreaming the impossible dream, thinking big, and when the fucking man comes in and is we can't do it like that, we could be all right, bro, we can do it however we want to do it.
Yeah.
Bruh. The patriarchy is dead. Well, it's not, but
No,
but yeah, that's and the Aquarius in me likes to just sit back and be let it burn.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying. Bring it all down. Let's rebuild.
Yes.
We need a full gut rehab.
Yep.
Okay,
thank you so much, Jordan. No, but we're gonna ask you back in about 24 hours. So
I'm free.
Oh my God. Every time we talk with her, it is like a therapy session.
Yeah. So it's talking to her is such a therapy session. I feel like we owe her money because it makes sense when you're talking about things and you're talking about what you're going through personally, but being told at the same time that it's pertaining to the bigger picture of the energy shift that's happening and what's in retrograde and where the moon, how everyone as a collective is experiencing the same sort of shift. So if you're stuck, everyone is feeling this stuck feeling. And
the math of it, when she goes into, because there's a lot of people that discount astrology saying it's just woo woo and it's just some bullshit. But it's a science. It's an actual science. It's very mathematical. And when she's well, this is in 29 degrees of Aries right now. I don't know what any of that stuff means. But then when she starts to explain what that means thematically, and for example, even her saying like, well, Pluto is slow moving. It stays in each sign 15 to 20 years. And in the next 2 years, it's going to move signs. So it's been in Capricorn. And the more scientific and mathematical detail that she goes into, just validates it more and more and more. And then I think maybe what you're saying too, Alyssa, is like when you do have whether we're talking to her in these episodes or when you have a one-on-one reading with her, as we both have, the specificity and in-depth science behind what she illuminates for you validates so many pieces of who you are. It's almost like
so much.
It's almost like it validates it and therefore gives you permission to accept those pieces of you and move on.
Yes.
Instead of having to continue to figure out why they're there, or if they're there, or if you're making this up, or like these pieces of myself that seem disjointed, or they seem that they're at odds. How can I be this and also be this? And sometimes all you need is somebody like Jordan, who's in tune and who understands the energetic shifts and the science behind astrology, to say, yes, you are this and you are this, for you to just be like, okay, I guess that's just that. And I don't have to figure out why. I just am.
Yeah, it's reminding you to stay present. And it's the surrendering of I loved her, like the illusion of control. That is like, so when she talked about, it's like modeled after what our generation and other generations have been modeled, the world has been modeled that for us. So it's like, it's such a thing to unlearn that part of existing. But it's also exciting and a relief.
It is a relief. And it just like makes you feel like you have a purpose here. You're here for a reason. You fit into the fabric of the universe, and you are affected by it just as it is affected by you.
Yeah.
And that's a relief, because it is just like, I'm not alone. Like I might feel alone a bunch of times, and you can't change that, but that's human to feel that way. And then to understand that in the bigger picture, we're all connected. Yeah. We're all affected by things. The way I always say this about astrology, though, it's like none of us have a problem accepting and acknowledging that the ocean is affected by the moon and the tides are affected by the moon. And that is like the biggest bodies of water on the planet. No one disputes that. But people have a hard time, even though our bodies are mainly made of water, have a hard time believing that our physical makeup and our bodies are affected by what's happening in the sky. Yep. Like, why is that so hard to believe?
I have a theory, and it involves misogyny, because I think astrology is like inherently feminine passion. So I think there's something to that. And it's also the same thing with if you can believe the moon and the tides. Wines have characteristics based on the season and where they were born. It's like, yes, our birth charts are fucking eye-opening. Like,
it's so true. Like people, sommeliers are like, this was in 1973, this part of the north coast of Sonoma Valley. Yeah. And it matters because the grape was harvested at this exact point when that there was the temperature on this night. This is what the weather was like the night before it was harvested. If all of that matters for wine, why in the world would it not make an impact on who we are? That's a really good point.
Yeah. So with that being said, get your reading done by her at Jordan Shomer. Please reach out to her. She's incredible.
Yeah. On Instagram, she's there. You can DM her for bookings and appointments. She's unreal. So thank you guys for joining us. Yeah. We want to shout out this week for our nonprofit, National Lawyers Guild Minnesota, nlgmn.org. The Minnesota chapter of the National Lawyers Guild is dedicated to supporting local protest movements and direct actions through coordinating legal support. Most recently, the NLG Minnesota has been working to provide legal support in response to the Minnesota uprising that occurred after the brutal and tragic police murder of George Floyd. During the uprising, the NLGMN assisted with coordinating legal observers and jail support, as well as legal support for those that were arrested. If you were arrested during the uprising or a different protest and have legal questions, please see the resource page or contact their hotline at 612-444-2654. The NLGMN is honored to support and fight alongside the brave and resilient people of Minnesota in the struggle towards justice. So to learn more and donate to them, go to nlgmn.org.
Yeah.
Also, Black Lives Matter, blacklivesmatter.com. We always are promoting, pushing that. Donate, get involved. There's chapters all over the country. There's obviously Black Lives Matter chapters and White People for Black Lives, which is in conjunction with it. Figure out where your local chapter is and just seriously get involved.
Yeah. Yep. Follow us on IG and Twitter at the SOS Pod. We're on YouTube, SOS with Molly and Alyssa. We're getting a lot of YouTube hits, Molly. So a lot of people are like consuming us on YouTube. So thank you.
We need to step up our outfit game then.
Thank you. We're on Spotify, Google, Apple Podcasts. Rate, review us. It helps us reach more people. We're on Patreon. Please join our Patreon for $3, $7, or $11. And we're going to send you so many goodies and love. And two of our patrons are Steve Ginn and Nija Brooks. We love you. Shout out to you guys.
We love you guys. And that support on Patreon is huge for us because we're growing. We're a little podcast. We're growing. Yeah. We're trying to gain some
traction,
to gain listeners and have this be a stream of income for us eventually. And so if you have $3 a month, it's like not that much, or up to $11 a month, it really helps us out a lot. And we do have extended interviews and bonus content.
Yes.
When our merch drops, we'll have special discount codes for those of you in there.
Hell yeah.
Please support us on Patreon.
Yeah.
I think did we cover it?
We covered it.
All right. Well, I'm Molly Cottrell.
I'm Alyssa Rosano.
And here's to turning meltdowns
into magic.